welcome to the Wandering Creatives Podcast. I'm your host, Allie, and joining me today is Megan Ryan of Freckled Hunnies. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. I am a huge fan of Freckled Hunnies, which is a maker's market out of Cary, North Carolina. And honestly, I think y'all might be one of my favorite markets that I participate in. I absolutely love being a vendor, and yeah, I don't know. It's just the location you use, the other vendors that you pull in, like everything you have going on just makes for like the best environment. So huge fan.
I really appreciate hearing that. I definitely have put some planning into that location and just like the vendors that we bring on. It's very carefully thought out, and that makes me really happy to hear you say that.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that there's a lot of thought put into what you're doing with Freckled Hunnies. And let's see. I think I met you, like 2 years ago almost now, maybe?
It was 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, at my very first ever market.
Yes. Yes. And I remember that was a December market. And I think that was one of the coldest markets I've ever held, ever.
It was so cold. I remember just sitting there and like I had 2 pairs of socks on and I was like, oh my God, my toes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was cold. I don't think I'll ever do a market in that kind of weather ever.
It was amazing though. Like I met people I still talk to today that do markets. So it was a really awesome experience. So yeah, I'm like super pumped to have you on the podcast to learn more about how you started, how and why I guess you started Freckled Hunnies, and then to also talk a little bit about your own artwork because you are an artist and a maker. So yes. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that as well. But before we jump into all the good stuff, I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to turn it over to Megan and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Megan Ryan. I'm the owner and event planner of Freckled Hunnies, based out of Cary, North Carolina, currently working to grow Freckled Hunnies and move to some other areas around the triangle and not even in the state. I started hosting markets in December of 2020 during the pandemic when it was like at its peak. It was just a way to like meet other people, have people come together in an environment that felt safe, that, you know, people who weren't ready to be indoors yet could just come and, you know, shop and just socialize. I feel like during that year, we were all isolated and weren't getting to do a lot of the things that we were used to prior 2020. So my family at the time owned Daybreak. It was a breakfast restaurant. Unfortunately, it did not survive the pandemic, but that's where I started hosting these markets. And I met so many people at that first market, like Allie and gosh, like Harmony Chiropractor was there. One of my good friends, Lauren, with her art was there. I mean, I just met so many people. Caitlin from X's and O's. Just
Bonsai
like
bottles.
Yes, all these people and people that still vend now for me. And they also suggest Freckled Hunnies to other vendors and people that they know. And that's how I've been growing, is just like word of mouth and, you know, people having their own personal experience being a Freckled Hunny. And it's just awesome to see that. It means so much to me just to see this community growing. And that is my biggest mission with Freckled Hunnies, is building community and giving space to people to like host like their own storefront without having a brick and mortar, and to get their name out there and to get their art out there, their products, whatever they're selling, and to have it be seen by the general public. Because, you know, it's hard starting a small business, and like if you don't have a place to like put your product, I mean, how are you going to be successful?
Yeah. Yeah, and something else I really enjoy about Freckled Hunnies is the cost. The booth fees are super manageable for makers, which is something that's hard to find because a lot of times the markets are quite expensive, or they can be. And depending on what you're selling as a maker, it's hard to make back those booth fees. So yes. I know it's always those markets where the prices are like perfect are like, I don't know, a diamond in the rough. Like, you find one every now and then and you're like, holy shit, like we gotta keep
Yeah.
this is a good one.
And that's really important to me too. The vendor fee and the space rental, obviously that money, the majority of it is going towards the business that the space is being rented from. And it's going towards, Freckled Honeys and, the cost of promoting, the time that's been put in and all that stuff. Like those are things that are taken into consideration when that fee is created. But as a maker myself and having done markets as well, like those fees are hard to pay sometimes because, like you said, you don't know if you're even going to make that money back. And me, just as the person I am and the artist that I am, it's like, I don't want to make people pay all this money when they're just getting started out. Like I just can't get behind that. Like I'm here to help you guys grow, like as other artists, and I just want to do it the right way. So when it comes to the fee, it's just me doing it knowing how that can affect other artists and vendors, and that can be a hurdle for some people. It's a really big struggle, and just watching the way the economy is right now and how the cost of everything is going up. I mean, it's hard out there. So if there's one way I could give back to people, that would be in the fee. Honestly, I think that's me giving something back to the community and helping artists.
Yeah, and I personally would like to say thank you. Because like as again one of your vendors, it's really something I appreciate because I think also like you mentioned you yourself have done markets before, and I think that brings a lot of insight into being a market organizer or coordinator because it's like you know the struggle, like you've been there, you've had to deal with market booth fees, and I think what a lot of folks don't realize is the amount of money that is spent leading up to a market by makers.
Oh yeah, like buying the supplies to make your product, to make your art, and it's expensive. Like, and also when it comes to that, like that part right there, people who are buying artwork from artists, I don't think sometimes they realize what the prices are made from, like the time that goes into it, how much the supplies have cost you, like. There's so many different factors into why we price our work the way we price it.
Yeah, making up for the table, the tents, the display.
I mean, exactly. Like things to make your display and your booth look pretty. I mean, you can do it. You can do it on a budget because I've done that. Like that's honestly how I do my booth setup. I buy everything from a thrift store. The main one I usually go to is Dorcas and Cary, and I get a lot of my stuff from there. And I also like to buy from thrift stores because I don't like to buy firsthand. I like to buy secondhand resource to help, practice sustainability and, helping this earth out. So that's another thing that's important to me, that you will see in my presentation of my booth, like a lot of vintage, like previously used stuff.
Nice. Yeah. That's something I want to work towards myself. I'm like, I'll get there one day. I'm not quite there, but that's definitely something I definitely am passionate about. And I love that. And you have like, I feel like I could spend a whole episode just talking about your booth layout and design alone because it's so chic and amazing and like inviting. I don't know. It's glorious. It really is because it's not like usually right. You see like a tent with a table and I mean that's what mine is. It's literally a tent and some tables and some stuff on the table. But like you've created an entire it almost is like you're walking into like a boutique store just outside, and I don't know. That's super impressive. I'm always blown away by your booth.
I appreciate that. And that's honestly like the mindset I have when decorating and laying out my booth. It is to have that feel of coming into a store, like coming into Evergreen Studio storefront. Like that's the whole point, that like I decorated that way to show that.
Definitely. I don't know. I get the vibe. I'm pretty sure other people do too.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And when it comes to being a market coordinator, so you kind of mentioned that the inspiration behind getting started as Freckled Hunnies was the pandemic almost. Like it was a way to reconnect with people and give people an opportunity to get out and socialize safely. Was being a coordinator something that you kind of had in the back of your mind when you were doing markets, or was it just something that kind of came about because there was a need for it?
Yeah. So when I started hosting these markets, I actually was an event planner for a company. So I have a background in event planning. My college degree is actually in interior design, and I have been a practicing interior designer since 2017. Been doing event planning since 2008, actually. Wow. Yes. And that goes way back to my first job out of high school, coordinating events for a local ice rink called Garner Ice House. I used to do like a lot of party planning for them. I would help with doing just like all kinds of events, help with their big rink in downtown Raleigh. And then it just has gone from there. I have always just been in that kind of role. And then being an event planner also goes hand in hand with my interior design, because I've also helped decorate parties that I've planned and such things like that. I just have like this very organized mentality about myself, I guess you can say. Like I like organizing things, putting things together, decorating, and it's just always flown, like has just flowed that way. And it's just something I thoroughly enjoy. So granted, now when I was working at the restaurant and I put this event together, the first market, I felt absolutely in love. I was like, I want to keep doing this. And so I kept doing it. And then it was like every month I was hosting a market, and then it became like every other weekend. And like, it was just so much. It's just so much fun. I love it. I love meeting people. I like just the creativity that people bring to the table. It's just awesome. Like everything about it. Yeah.
Can definitely see that interior design background and event planning. Well, that's the other thing. Like I'm, not to like fangirl, I guess, but the like they are well planned out. Like the events that you hold, like I feel like it's very like every now and then you might get in a market where there's not like a lot of communication, or you have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And I feel like you guys have like you have a really well run kind of method process to your markets.
Yeah, communication for me is one of the top tiers of my priority when it comes to interacting with vendors in planning. It's like anything in life, in any kind of relationship. To be successful, you need to have communication with your peers, like partner, like coworkers, whatever. Like, and so I've learned that, and I know that that's also important between me as a vendor host and my vendors, like having that communication, giving you guys the information like weeks prior to like an event, like just being like, okay, so like this is what's going to start. This is where you can park. This is where you can load and unload. And, I do like the space planning for the market and show where everyone's tent's going to be. And even when I do that, like I take into thought, like, well, this vendor sells this product, this vendor sells this product. So I try to not put like 2 sticker people next to each other or 2 jewelry artists right next to each other or something like that, because it's just like you want to give everybody the equal opportunity to make money. And it's like I am very much for, community over competition. But it's like when you have just like back to back to back of like jewelry or whatever, that also can like make it hard. But I like having all those people there to support each other, to be like, oh yeah, well, you make jewelry, I make jewelry. Well, we can still be here together, like
Mm-hmm.
it's you, that individual, that's also going to help sell your product, and you're giving a part of yourself with that product that you're selling. So that's what helps to make you all stand out. But I also don't want to have you guys all lined up in the same row.
Yeah. Just this is the sticker row. This is the jewelry row.
Yeah, I want it to be mixed up. I want people to be able to like go around and just see all these different things and have a lot to look at throughout the whole market, and not feeling like they get stuck in one area looking at just one, selected item of stickers or jewelry or pottery, whatever it be.
Yeah. And I guess I'm curious, when you did your first market, did you think that it would turn into Freckled Honeys? Like, did you have any kind of an idea that like this was going to be your jam?
Honestly, no, I really didn't. It just happened. And it's crazy to think how it happened, starting in 2020 and now being here in 2022 and still rocking markets. Like, I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing this for 2 years now, and it's just like it has evolved a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'm definitely entering this phase where I'm seeing that it's picked up, and it's nothing but going uphill, because each market, I'm getting more vendors in the last market. I'm having people reach out now to be like, hey, can you host a Freckled Hunnies market here and like do this? And it's like, well, damn, like I'm like doing the
This is
damn
happening.
thing. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's legit happening. And I think that really makes me feel good. It makes me just like happy to know that like other people care about this community and want to be a part of it. And that's all I've
Mm-hmm.
ever wanted. I just like bringing people together. And that, I think, just makes me the happiest.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
It's a
makes me
good
happy.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've said this in so many episodes, but I'm gonna say it again. The like the creative maker community is like one of the best. It's
It
just so
really,
great.
yeah, it really is. Like, I have met so many great people, and people now that I consider friends, or just like people who just are like they encompass a good vibe. Like,
Mm.
they themselves are just a good vibe, and I love the energy and just like being a part of this community, because it's just so important to have that. Like, anything in life, just having a community of people that you trust and that will support you and help you through life. And I feel like a lot of us have found that in the makers community, and it's just a really great thing.
Yeah, and that was, I may have said it earlier, but in case I didn't, that's one of the other things I really enjoy about the Freckled Hunnies markets is there's just like a good vibe. Like everyone's chill and just, I don't know. It's a really relaxed, enjoyable type of market, which is great.
And that's also what I'm striving for. It's just like, I want everybody to come, have fun, and just not have this pressure. I don't
Mhm.
want it to be a thing that you feel like there's pressure to it, that you need to be stressed out about it. It's just like, come, be yourself, do your thing.
Yeah, I love it. I guess last-ish question related to markets, but and we've maybe kind of touched on this a little bit, but what's something that you have learned about yourself through organizing markets?
I don't know if it's necessarily something I've learned about myself, but something I've gained. And this is thanks to like art and the markets, is confidence.
Mm.
I struggled so much over my entire life, actually, with confidence, and presenting myself in a confident way, being able to just be myself. And I think I found that within the markets, within my artwork, because it's scary to put
Mm.
yourself out there, like with your art. It is a very vulnerable thing, because you're thinking like, well, how is such and like, how are people going to react to this? Like, what are people going to think about this? Like, what, like, you feel like this judgment almost, putting your artwork out there. You're scared. You want people to like it. And yes, not everyone's going to like what you make. Everybody has different tastes and or different, just styles. But I've also learned like not even though everyone's not going to like it, there are people who will, and the people who do like it, they really do it. They appreciate it. They love it, and they can see how it encompasses you as an individual, and that has just like that has just been like the biggest thing I've gained from markets and putting myself out there as an organizer and as an artist as well. It's just, yeah, that confidence. And I also think, if I was to say I've learned something since doing markets, learned a lot about business, how to do business with people, running a business. Like, I've learned a lot when it's come to that. Yeah. Being a small business owner, it's like, until you're in it, you don't realize how much work really, really goes into it.
Yeah.
And I think and I think that was also another reality of this was like, holy crap, there's a lot that goes into this. Like the financial part, tax brackets, tax credit, having insurance, like for the market. So like, just like things that people don't think about. Like there's a lot. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I didn't even think about, the insurance for the market.
Oh yeah.
I can imagine.
Oh yeah. So having that just like in case something happens to like one of the vendors or one of the shoppers, like always having insurance. If you are listening and you are a host of markets, make sure you have insurance. That is very important.
Advice point number one.
Yes, advice tip number one. Yeah, insurance. Always have insurance.
I was going to say along the lines of your confidence, I would never have known because you come off as very confident and very like, your shit. So I never would have guessed that like that was a factor in any of it. So it's definitely.
And that's like, I do, it's like, and what you just said, like knowing your shit, it's like, I do know my shit, but how are like people going to know you know your shit without having that confidence? And I think that's something in life that I learned when I started markets or even like in my professional life before the markets. It's like presenting yourself professionally, having that confidence goes a long way because it does show that you know what you're talking about. And that's how people will take you serious.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just like one of those life lessons that I've had to learn the hard way. And I think since then I have just been like, you know what? You got to do it.
What's up?
Exactly.
Welcome to Freckled Hunnies.
Exactly. Mic drop.
Boom. Something else I wanted to talk a little bit about on today's episode is your artwork, because you've mentioned a few times you are an artist as well. Yeah. What type of art or maker are you?
So if there's one word I describe myself in all forms of my life is eclectic. I am a very eclectic person. Like when it comes to so I've said it before, I'm an interior designer. So when it comes to interior designing, like I'm eclectic. I like modern, I like chic, I like farmhouse, traditional, like all these different styles. And I've just like mashed them together, and I know how to make it work. I know how to make it look good the right way. So when it comes to also my visual art, I do a lot. I'm a painter, so I do acrylic painting on canvas. I make jewelry, and it's a mix between polymer clay and resin art. I make little house decor things like plant pots that I hand paint, and then I also make coasters out of polymer clay, and then I hand paint them, stencil them myself, and then I top them off with resin so they're waterproof and heat resistant. So I make a lot of different, whatever I see. It's just like I'll see something and I'll be like, I want to make that. I can make that. So then I'll start making it. But one theme that does hold in all of my artwork is nature.
Mm.
I'm very inspired by nature. It makes me feel good. I am an outdoorsy person. I like hiking, camping, being on the water, being on a mountainside. So you'll see a lot of like floral art from me, mountain work, beach work, just stuff like that. Because as human beings, I mean, we are all drawn to nature and it makes us feel good.
Mm. Did you start with acrylic painting and then move into like polymer clay stuff, or what was your kind of art journey?
So I've always been an artist, a painter. I mean, I've
Mm.
always been a painter. That has been my first love of art is painting. As I actually painted this behind me.
Oh, no way!
Yeah,
I've been like looking at it as we've been talking. So, oh,
yeah.
nice.
So I have been painting since I could hold a pencil or even a paintbrush in my hand. So like the little age of like 3. I like to tell people this because it's just like this is how my art career started. I won my first art contest in first grade. So it's like, yeah,
Nice. From when you were
started
little.
little, started very young, went to college for art and design. I mean, it's just something that has always been a huge part of my life. I come from a family of artists as well. My aunt is a painter. She's a watercolor artist. And she's actually been like the biggest inspiration in my life or mentor, I could say. She has always pushed me to be creative. She's also just been like the biggest inspiration for me as an artist as well, just watching her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That
So,
is
yeah.
adorable.
Yes, she's an amazing human, and I love my Aunt Monica. Like she's a great artist. She's a watercolor artist. So
Mm,
yeah.
nice. What was it about, like, what drew you to the polymer clay? And, like, what was it just like a new way to kind of express yourself through, or
Yeah,
jewelry in general, or?
yeah. So I had a friend. I have a friend, Lauren. Her and I worked together for a little bit, and she was making resin earrings. And I was like, oh, I want to try that. And she's like, well, you should. Like, you should try it. And I was like, okay. So I started making the resin jewelry, and it was so much fun. And if you are not a resin artist, like, you got to be careful with it because it is a chemical. You are inhaling some
Yes.
very harsh fume. There's a lot of science behind it, getting the mixture right. But once I found what worked for me as an artist, and like finding that perfect mix and everything, I was able to start playing with it in such ways that I never was able to do art. Like I started doing like canvas art with it. I started just like
Mm.
making all kinds of stuff using it and fell in love. So then I went from that to polymer clay, just, again, exploring it. I would see TikTok videos, Instagram, and like Pinterest, so like all these people making stuff. And I was like, well, I want to make stuff using polymer clay too. Like that's so fun. And then again, it was like trial and error, figuring out like techniques and, like how to make your own colors and mixing it and like baking the polymer clay at the right temperature for the right amount of time so
Mm.
it stayed durable and wouldn't break and, all those things. So I, that's a, like, I also, when it comes to art, I like experimenting with, the different techniques, different materials, and just like how things are going to react to each other. And I think that's another reason why I was drawn and still am doing resin and polymer clay, just because it's a challenge.
Hmm.
And when it comes to making that art, and that it just makes it so much more fun for me.
And you can do so much with it, like so much.
Oh, so much. Like it's insane how much you can do with both mediums. Like it's just crazy. And then I see other artists who are resin artists or polymer clay artists and like the things that they're able to do with it, and I'm just like, what? I wouldn't have thought to do that. Like that's awesome. Like do
Hmm.
you? It's great.
So before we go, I wanted to ask if you had any advice for makers that are applying for markets, especially Freckled Honey events. Like, do you have any kind of tips for them when they go through that process?
Yes. So this can be applied to Freckled Honeys or like any other market that you're looking into. Always have your social media presentation like on point. Like
Mm.
be be thoughtful about what you are putting on your social media, as in like how you want your product, how you want you to be presented, because I get emails all the time from people wanting to be a vendor and being like, well, you can check out my Instagram, you can check out my Facebook and stuff like that. And I appreciate that because it also gives me a good idea of like what you're selling, what your theme is, your style, who you are, and such like that. So when I say that, it's like, make sure you have good quality photos. Make sure you are, putting out your best and presenting your best, because people see that. And if you don't have a good social media presentation, nobody's going to take you seriously as a professional artist. And I think people need to also realize how social media now plays into things, because it's here to stay. It's not going away. It's how we all communicate. And every business, every type of business is now using it as a platform to sell their product and put their name out there. So just take that into consideration. Another thing I would advise is when you are participating in markets, putting thought and planning into your booth, because you can sign up for these markets, right? That's your first step, getting out there, signing up, paying that fee. And it's like, cool, I have now, secured my place here. That was the first hurdle. The second hurdle is going to be when you're at those markets, presenting yourself to draw in clients. And the best thing that you can do for yourself is making a booth that is, appealing and presenting yourself to where it's going to draw people in. So that would be the other thing, putting time into that booth to sign. The third thing I would advise is when you're at the markets, be as interactive as you possibly can. If you are not an outgoing person or you're an introvert, I'll be honest with you, maybe markets are not the thing for you to be doing, because nobody's going to want to come up to you. And if you can't hold a conversation with somebody, you're probably not going to make that sell. And that's just me being very honest. That's me knowing this, field. I come from a very broad background of customer service, with having been in restaurants, having been in commercial interior design and such, and being able to hold conversation is key. And so if you can't do that, you're probably not going to make a sale. And it kind of does take kind of being a salesperson, but not being an annoying salesperson. Like, you don't want to be annoying, but you want to intrigue people and have conversation with them and tell them about yourself, tell them about your artwork and stuff like that. Also, I know a lot of people like to sit at the markets. I started not bringing a chair with me on purpose, because I realized when I stand up more, it draws people in because they can see me over my tables. I'm not hunched over. Like, my posture and my physical presentation about just having good posture, it also draws people in. So yeah.
I have not thought about that.
Yeah. So those are just things that I have learned from personal experience. I have seen from other vendors. And it's not to ever be mean or be critical or anything. It's just being, honest and, realizing what it does take to be successful at markets, because you're not getting the most out of your money when you don't do those things that I just listed, because you're pretty much putting stoplights up already for yourself.
Yeah, those are really good tips. Yeah. And some I hadn't heard or haven't thought of before, especially the standing. Really smart. It's a really good one.
I've noticed that from the beginning. When watching other markets, or even noticing with myself the interaction, and noticing that the people who are standing, I can just tell without even having to look at their sales numbers, they're the ones making the most money.
Yeah. Really smart.
Yep.
pick your brain about markets all day.
Yes, yes. And I will say I am actually starting to do workshop, going over that kind of stuff and getting a little bit more in depth about it, like giving pointers on how to decorate your booth setup and not have to break the bank to do it. Like, so I give tips on that. I give tips on, communicating and how to talk to people, how to present yourself, and working on your overall presentation with like your posture and coming up with like, if you're not comfortable with talking to people, giving people easy topics to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That will, build a relationship between you and customers without having to go out of your comfort zone.
Are those workshops primarily in person, or will you be offering them online as well?
I'm starting them right now in person, and then we'll like to be moving it to be virtual as well. But a lot of the stuff that I go over, I feel like you need to be in person for, because I do a lot of demonstrating in person. Like, I do live builds of booths. And
nice.
showing how to decorate your table, how to store your booth supplies if you don't have a lot of space at home, because I don't. So like having it to like be properly stored, and how to store your artwork as well. Like, you don't have to keep pulling it out every single time. Like, you can keep it stored between your markets.
So smart. Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Might have to take one of those classes.
Yes, because I have a couple of markets or workshops that I have lined up. So.
Oh, nice. So besides the workshops that you have coming up that you're working on, is there anything else that you'd like to include? You got any events coming up, or is there a good place for people to kind of follow along for when things do come up?
Yeah, so all of my market dates are posted on Freckled Hunnies website. So it's www.freckledhunnies.com. I'm on Instagram. It's at Freckled Hunnies, and on Facebook as well at Freckled Hunnies.
Nice. And I will, of course, include Freckled Hunnies information and Megan's information as well in the episode description. So listeners, you will be able to find it super easy. You can just click on the link in the episode description, and it will take you right to the website and social media. So definitely cannot encourage you enough to check out Freckled Hunnies, especially if you're a maker, and especially if you're looking for a nice, chill, fun place to maybe be a vendor at. Cannot recommend Freckled Hunnies Markets enough.
Thank you.
And with that, I just want to say, Megan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It was so great to see you again and get to talk to you.
Absolutely. And I can't wait for the next market.
Awesome. Yes.
And listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in today. If you have questions or comments for me or for any of my guests, which include Megan, you can call us or text us, leave a voicemail on our hotline. It's 252-419-6004. And we will include them in a future episode of the podcast. And be sure to follow us at Wandering Creatives Pod, and like, rate, and review the Wandering Creatives podcast wherever you listen. And with that, until next time, stay creative. Thanks for listening to the Wandering Creatives podcast, a CEI media production. Please like, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, as it helps us greatly. You can follow us on Instagram at Wandering Creatives Pod, and on Facebook at Wandering Creatives Podcast. If you would like to support the podcast, you can become a Patreon for just $5 a month. The link is in the episode description.